Hi everyone and welcome to our debut show of the Aspie Whisperer. So our show's about connecting with the AS community, and in today's show we're going to be bringing different segments like Aspie News, our animated segment of Set the Scene. We've also got Tip of the Week, interviews, and we've also got Mike Unleashed. So this is where Mike talks without a filter. Very funny guy, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Today's topic is on, challenging those community mindsets and breaking down the stereotype. And when I think about that and think about, what does AS mean to the community? And it reminds me of a story of when, Austin was about, I think it was around about 8. And we weren't having a great day that day. It wasn't a great day at school. He was quite tired and overwhelmed. And that night we had his older sister's recital up at the school. And, it was time to leave the home and he was having a bit of a meltdown. We got to the auditorium, the meltdown increased, and, we finally got seated, and his poor Oz not coping at all. He's, going off, and people are looking at us and staring at us, and, the judgment in people's eyes and the look of, can't you keep that child quiet? And I'm knowing that here we are, we're stuck in this situation for over 2 hours. We didn't have a choice. We have more than one child, so therefore we have to be able to balance things and meet all of our kids' needs. And it was really important that we were there. Although I did understand that, the noise, the darkness, the waiting, and being somewhere he didn't want to be were all triggers. And he was feeling really overwhelmed. And just trying to help, keep him calm, often throughout the recital while my daughter wasn't on the stage, my husband or I would take turns in taking him in and out of the auditorium. We sort of sat up closer to the top of the stairs so that it was an easier access and we weren't as disturbing as many people. And he finally settled. And I can remember the principal coming on and he was giving out awards and he called our daughter up and he announced our last name as Cahill. And from the back of the auditorium, you hear this little voice yell out and go, "It's Carl. Have you not got it right yet?" And we were in hysterics and the meltdown was over. Everybody just kind of started laughing and it sort of relaxed everything. And I sort of think, the judgment that we felt at the start would have been so easy to get up and walk away because people didn't understand. They don't know what you're going through and they're just looking at you like this child's playing up. And another really good example of that was a couple of weeks ago. I was down in Woolworths at our local shopping centre. And there was a young mum in there. She's probably in her, I'd say, 20s. And she had a young child with her who's probably about 5 or 6. And he totally wasn't coping. He was starting to sort of scream and cry, and he was pushing things off the shelf, and he was pulling at the trolley, and his hands were going up, and he's covering his ears, and started to see that slightly stim come through where he's shaking and pushing and pulling and grabbing things, and the fingers are opening and closing, and he was really starting to go into a full-on meltdown. And Mum's looking really, really stressed. I'm looking around at the people who are watching her and, there's people giving her foul looks and tutting and muttering things and look at that child and, geez, he's just not behaving. And, my heart was going out to her. And all of a sudden, Mum's come over to him. She's got down on his eye level and she's knelt down. And she's just opened her arms and she says, "Okay, buddy, do you need a hug?" And he's just folded into her arms. And that says it all, doesn't it? Here's this child who was in this environment that was busy, it was crowded, it's noisy, the lighting, and he wasn't coping. And Mum knew he wasn't coping, but instead of getting angry with him, she helped him and she supported him to feel safe. And once he sort of felt safe and had that hug, Mum sort of said to him, we've got to get 3 more things on the list, let's grab those 3 things and then we can get out of here. And they moved on and they did that. And I watched them go out and I just thought to myself, you are an amazing mum, and that does my heart good. So although, when we're challenging those stereotypes, we're looking at the perspective from our side as well as the perspective from the community side. And without the knowledge of what's going on, they just don't get it. People see, they have a child on the spectrum, there's behaviours happening and they just see this naughty kid or this kid who's been oppositional and just won't toe the line, or, kids who have ADHD, they're just fidgeting and running around and being naughty. And it's like, hang on, all behaviour is a way of communicating something. And it's up to us to have a look and see what that person's trying to communicate. Because if that's the only way that they can communicate what's happening with them, that's what we're going to get. So we need to teach them and support them to be able to communicate in different ways. You know, when you think about it, you know, the mirror neurons come from the frontal part of the brain. So basically what it means is most people have mirror neurons, comes from frontal cortex. And what that looks at is people with ASD have fewer mirror neurons than the neurotypical community. So that means that, you know how kids normally, when they're engaging and they play in peer support groups, they watch each other and watch how people play and how they act or respond in different situations, and they learn from that experience. Well, people on the autism spectrum, they have the fewer neurons, so therefore they don't tend to mirror that sort of stuff. And that's why we need to take a step back and, I guess, sort of step in and help them and break that down for them and show them what that means, you know, and how to learn that. And that's where our kids need our support. And we've got to remember that people with autism, they don't grow out of autism. Okay, you know, when you're diagnosed with autism, you're diagnosed for life. And our autistic children grow into autistic teens and then into autistic adults. And they're still the same children, teens and adults like everybody else. It's just that they have different ways of processing information and different ways of excelling at some things and challenges in others. But I think that's pretty accurate of most of society. It's time for the Aspie News, where we talk everything autism. So today in the Aspie News, we're talking about the COVID-19 and the current restrictions and the pandemic that's going on and how it affects people with autism. Experts are warning us that we're going to see a huge regression in behaviours and communication through to the lack of contact that people have been able to have with their therapists and their support workers due to the restrictions and the lockdowns. And that's it today for our Aspie News. If you guys have any autism news that you'd like us to share, drop us a line at our Talking Aspie Facebook group. And now it's time for this week's interview and the inside word with Austin Cahill.
Hi Trudy, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So this week we're talking about challenging the community mindsets and, you know, breaking down the stereotype. And I guess it's no secret that you've got a diagnosis of Asperger's. How long ago were you diagnosed?
Well, I'd say starting from now, it's probably been a decade, so I would have been around 9 at the time.
Are you happy that you got the diagnosis?
Well, yeah, it's really good because at the time a lot of people just thought I was a misbehaving child. So obviously now, with you know, it being known that it's autism, it kind of makes it a bit clearer. So you know, there's a benefit to having the label at that age.
What about, would you recommend that people got a diagnosis, like if they were in their teenage years or older?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's just one of those things that you should know, because if you're struggling in society, in day-to-day life, then it's a really good thing to have that ability to, you know, even if it won't fix all your problems, but it will definitely help to, you know, piece the puzzle together, as it were.
So it gives you an understanding as to why
exactly
you react a certain way or what happens. Do you think it's a limitation?
No, I mean, anything's only a limitation if you see it that way. A lot of people will have the mentality that they are on a lower level than other people when it comes to autism, but in fact it's just a different perspective of life.
No, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. What about with, you know, if I was to talk to you about friendships and relationships, did you find them easy or hard or?
Well, I think everyone, autism or not, will find relationships difficult, especially the first couple of times. I used to have a lot of friends in primary school, but then as high school came around, I didn't have as many friends because I was out of that situation. I was in a different, you know, social norm, so it was kind of, it made it more difficult, but I did manage to find friends along the way, and I've excelled more in relationships. But, you know, I feel like a lot of people, it's not as easy in the movies, obviously. So, you know, it's difficult, but I managed to, if you can find someone that you have something in common with, it just makes it easier.
Yeah, so it's finding those connections. Do you think, like, we have a lot of early intervention for younger children?
Yeah.
But I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that the social cues and the social interactions and social skills that you're taught when you're younger actually need to change and be taught in a different way as you become a teenager.
Yeah, well, like, when I was a kid, like, autism wasn't as, I mean, it was, but it wasn't as, in my school at least, it wasn't, like, a big common thing. So, like I said, a lot of people just thought I was a misbehaving child.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely, to have more understanding, to have programs in place, not just specifically for autism, but for people that have, you know, troubles in social situations and struggle just in general.
And I guess the thing is, when you look at that, you know, the expectations are different. You know, I think we need to see the person first and be able to sort of support everybody, regardless of a label or not a label. If I was to talk to you about teachers, and I'm going to go to the high school years, like, we know that year 8, year 9, they're difficult years for kids on the spectrum. Do you think that the teachers need a more thorough understanding, or what would you, if you could give a message to teachers of kids on the spectrum, what would your message be?
I think it's important that everyone understands. It's like, autism is not like most conditions where, you know, it's all physical. Like, you know, with a handicapped person, you can tell they're handicapped because they can't use a certain part of their body. But with autism, you can't tell until they're either struggling to the point of meltdown, or they're just not coping in general. But yeah, I think that teachers need to be more aware, besides from the obvious of, like, you know, obviously if a kid's screaming, you know, there's trouble. But there needs to be a more thorough understanding than that. So that way you can fix a situation before it starts, in a way.
Yeah, and you can sort of put those tools in place so that it doesn't escalate. Yeah. And it helps that person to feel more safe.
Exactly.
Because let's face it, I mean, meltdowns and things like that happen mainly because somebody's feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. Something in their area isn't working. Is there anything about you that you wish you could change?
Well, if I changed something about myself, then I'd be changing all of me, in a way. Because, you know, like, it's a big puzzle. When you take away one piece, the puzzle's not complete anymore. Yeah. So, like, obviously there are things that I wish I could improve on, and that I am every day. I'm improving on things. But I don't think I would specifically change a whole 180 aspect of my personality. Learn to accept what you've got and work with it more than try to get rid of something about yourself. Yeah, or hide it or avoid it. Yes. Because I think you got to embrace. You know, we're all individuals and we're all different and we all have strengths and we all have challenges. Yeah. And I think if we can embrace who we are as a person, we're always going to be moving towards that. You know, I heard a really good quote once, and that was, you set yourself a goal in life, you write it down, and then every decision that you make, you make with that goal in mind. And I think that's very apt for everybody. Yeah, you know? I think so too. So what about, okay, so for our final question before we wrap up, what are the things that you think are your strengths, that your Asperger's has given you in your strengths? Well, again, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell if that's more a strength because of my autism or it's because of just who I am. But I would definitely think I'm more analytical of stuff. I have more. A lot of people make this out like I'm negative, but I'm more critical of things. Like, I'm more likely to, you know, find the flaws than to find the good parts, and I'm working on that. You know, everything has its pros. So I definitely think that is something that perhaps I would say it probably is the autism that does that for me. That I'm just, I have a better analysis of things than I think I would have normally. I mean, that's not bragging, but, you know, that's just how I feel. And that's how you see it. And I think that's a really good account of how you see yourself. Yeah. I would definitely say, I mean, hence one of the reasons why we have you working on the show, because you are so good at what you do. Yeah. And you're very thorough. You've got a really good eye for detail. I know I said that was the last question, but I'm going to hit you with one more just because I'd like to throw people out. Surprise, surprise. Do you think that it's like, you know, Dad's on the spectrum? Yes. And you're on the spectrum, but you're both very different in many ways. Yeah. Do you think it helps knowing that Dad's on the spectrum for you? It's more comforting because you know, when you just tell someone they have autism, they're going to feel a bit like an outcast. They're going to feel that something's wrong with them, they're different, and it shouldn't be that way. But since my own father is on the autism, it makes more, you know, it makes it seem more normal and makes more sense, because it's like, you know, someone who I'm closer to than pretty much 99% of people on the planet has it too, so it makes it more normal. Like, you know, everyone's going to have their mentality that they're going to feel different, and I don't feel different, I guess, would be the word.
really hear what you say, because I think that's something that a lot of teenagers and preteens struggle with.
Yeah.
Is that they have this perception of what they think society thinks autism is, and so therefore that's what they're supposed to be, and that doesn't sit with them. They forget that they're first.
Yeah.
You know. But thanks for coming in, Oz. It was awesome
Thank
to
you
have
for
you
having
here.
me.
Our pleasure, and thank you for giving that insight.
It was good. It was good to be here and to give the insight.
Awesome. And that's it for our interview this week. It's time now for our animated scenario, Set the Scene. This week's Set the Scene is... They don't look autistic. Can you spot an Aspie? So who in the classroom's got autism? What about in the cafe? Can you tell? Sitting at the doctor's, I can often pick. No, I can't. What about when you're shopping? Isn't it easy to tell which one's got autism? The bottom line is, you can't. Unless they tell you.
Hi, welcome to Mike Unleashed, or otherwise known as TK's Tanty. Okay, so this is the bit where I sort of like shoehorn myself into Trudy's podcast each week. And just talk about from a middle-aged Aspie who was diagnosed late in life, and some of the stuff that we have to deal with and the things that we, what's the best way to put it? Drive us nuts, I guess. Okay, this week we're going to start with the biggest one that drives me insane, all right? And that is when people say to you, we're all on the spectrum somewhere, all right? You're not. You may wish you were, but you're not, all right? That's just like saying, okay, now we're all in coronavirus lockdown. We all know what it's like to be a hostage for the last 12 months. You don't, all right? It's totally different. All right, so just stop saying it. It really annoys us. I know you're trying to say it to relate, okay? But you're not. It's just censored, self-censored. I know this is the Unleashed and no filter zone, but I'm going to censor myself what I'm going to say. It really, really annoys us, okay? It's just stop doing it. I know you love to say it because you think, oh, they can relate to us and blah, 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 blah. But no! It's annoying! It's really, really annoying! So, please stop and thank you. All right, so next week I'll come up with something a bit more intelligent and all that sort of stuff. But just this week, I just really want to get that point, because if I can stop one person this week from saying it, then I've achieved what I wanted to do this week. Thanks. And make sure you subscribe, join us on Facebook, and make sure you join the Aspie Whisperer forum, because then you can like even ask me questions. I know there won't be too big questions, but you never know. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
And this week's tip of the week is, if you're going to talk to someone about their extreme focus and what they're really into, make sure you've got all the facts, because I guarantee you if you get it wrong, they'll tell you. And that's the end of our first show. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I had lots of fun making it. If you've got any comments and stuff that you would like to share, or leave us any comments or feedback or any stories that you'd like us to share or topics that you'd like us to cover, don't forget to hit subscribe and like us, and also to leave any comments on our Facebook group, Talking Aspie.